Hey there, it's Brett from Booster Therapy. I wanted to take a quick moment before today's video to remind you that in the month of July 2020, we are giving away one custom commander deck valued at about $300 USD to anyone who comments across all of our videos. So we're going to take all of those comments, pick one of them from all of the videos, which we post one a day, and one of you will be the lucky winner. So make sure you're commenting, liking, subscribing to all of our videos, and enjoy! Welcome back to Booster Therapy and another episode of Commanding Presence. We have a fun little deck to break down for you all today. It's another one of our Brett's builds from the Patreon build. We have a Discord server that has a category called Brett's Builds where any of the patrons of our channel can set a budget and I build a deck. And today is a special deck. It's a monocolored deck for one of our patrons. We're going to break this one down, and today's deck tech is about Elesh Norn Grand Cenobite. So if you don't know what this is, it's 5 colorless and 2 white, so that's right, 7 mana for a 4/7 vigilance. Other creatures you control get +2/+2. Other creatures your opponents control get -2/-2. So mono white, there is the traditional challenge of mono white is not strong enough, right? Well, this one feels very strong. The one thing that we had to start this deck with, though, is some massive ramp. When you have a commander that is essential to getting online because it really does set the tone of how this deck works, that costs 7 mana, you need to work really hard to make sure you're getting there as fast as you can. So we're going to talk through first, like always, our ramp package with this one, and it is fairly robust. The first thing we have with this one is, of course, a Soul Ring. Every commander deck should have a Soul Ring. The next one is a new card from Commander 2020. It's Cartographer's Hawk. So this one is oddly good. It's also just a 2/1 flyer for 2, which when Elesh Norn is out is actually pretty devastating. It can just kind of clip in. But most importantly, when it deals damage to a player who controls more lands than you, we can return the Hawk to our hand, search for planes, and put it onto the battlefield tap. So it's not just putting it into our hand, but it's actually getting onto the battlefield. Next, we have Arcane Signet. It's another staple of every commander deck, at least for me at this point. Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, very good. They work on most budgets. They're not like they're $10, $15, $20 cards. Usually you can get both of them for $5 or less. Just very good. Prismatic Lens, it's a super budget, 2 mana ramp, and 2 mana ramp is my favorite. Everflowing Chalice, again, it's 2 mana ramp, or if we've already got some sort of presence established, we could put 4 into this or 6 into this and have it tap for 2 or 3 every time instead of just the 1. Mind Stone, another very effective 2 mana ramp spell. Knight of the White Orchid, as long as somebody has more lands than us, this is a great turn 2 drop. Palladium Mirror, it's recently reprinted. I love this one because it's a 3 mana ramp that taps for 2 for any deck. So this really could go anywhere. And again, with green, you typically have better choices, Cultivate, Kodama's Reach, something like that. But for things that don't have green, this is a great one. Commander Sphere, another good just small ramp spell that has that added benefit of sacking to draw a card. The Burnished Heart, we can sack and get 2 basic lands into play tapped. Solemn Simulacrum, a very good one for non-green ramp. He's just a really effective creature. A 2/2 body that gets us a land and then draws us when it dies. The Thran Dynamo, because again, we're going big on this ramp. We need to be able to tap for 7 as quick as possible to get Elesh Norn out and really set a tone. The Nyx Lotus, one of my new favorite ramp spells, especially for your monocolored decks. I actually don't really see this fitting in many other places. I could see some 2-color decks playing it, but really you're wanting to at least tap for 2 or 3 with this. When you're playing monocolored, it's really easy to always get that. The Gilded Lotus, 5 mana to tap for 3 white or 3 of any color. And the final one is Oketra's Monument, which actually doubles as ramp in this case for our creature spells, makes all white creatures 1 less, but it also gives us tokens, and tokens is definitely a sub-theme of this deck. Tokens are going to be important. They spray the battlefield with tons of little 1/1s, 2/2s, whatever it is, and Elesh Norn, of course, makes those things devastating. The next part we'll talk about is some of our token strategy with this deck. We're not leaning all the way into tokens. There are some other mechanics I want to work with. that we'll talk about next. But tokens, of course, make sense. Elesh Norn really supports it well. So the first one we have is big. We're getting big mana with our ramp, right? So we have the Storm Herd for 10 mana. We get to create X 1/1 white Pegasus creature tokens with flying, where X is our life total. So this one, it is extremely expensive, and hopefully we're ramping and getting into this. But really, it's a win card. If you can avoid a board wipe or protect yourself against a potential board wipe after casting this, this wins you the game. The next one is Increasing Devotion, a really effective, little token generator. So 5 mana gives you 5 1/1s. But the best part is we can flash this back, so we get to use this card twice in your play. And when we flash it back, instead of getting 5 of those 1/1s, we're actually getting 10. Oketra the True, not only is it just a powerhouse of a creature, a 3/6 double strike indestructible for 4, it also is a token generating machine. We can dump 4 mana into this whenever we need to and make a 1/1, which is hopefully a 3/3 if Elesh Norn is out. The Sigiled Sword of Valeron, whenever anything we have attacks, it spits out a 2/2 knight, so it just helps us to keep that board presence strong. The Finale of Glory, this one, again, just getting us some of those 2/2s, and if for whatever reason we have 10 mana to put into X, so 12 total, we could get some angels as well. Legion's Landing, it's a quick 1/1 creature, and then when it flips, which we'll do pretty quick with going as wide as we are with this deck, it does help us to just generate more and more creatures when we go to the other side of Legion's Landing. And the last one is another new one from Core 2020. It's called Call the Coppercoats. It's one that we can strive, but choose any number of target opponents, create an XX1 white human creature token, where X is the number of creatures those opponents control. So we're hoping our opponents with this spell have a lot of creatures going on, and we're playing a bit of that creature feature with a few other people. And then we can strive to choose more than one opponent if there's a couple that are really worthy targets for us. So just a pretty cheap way to create a handful of tokens. The next part of the deck we're going to talk about is what I think white does best, and what white does in one of the most annoying and obnoxious ways, and that is just taxing people. And it's not always taxing and literally adding to a mana cost, but taxing them in different ways that is just restrictive, keeping it restrictive play. You're controlling the tempo of the game. White does it, I think, better than anything. Oftentimes we think of controlling tempo, we think of blue, we think of control spells, but really, white is a tone setter. And that's something when you have a commander that's 7 mana, you really have to work hard to do, is set that tone early, control the board state, protect yourself as you're doing it. So that's the cards we're going to talk about here. The first one is Baird, Steward of Argive. It works a lot like a Ghostly Prison. We're just taxing our opponents if they want to try to attack us. The next one is the Eidolon of Rhetoric. This makes it so our players can't cast more than a spell each turn. Now, this obviously could hurt us as well, but oftentimes we're kind of ramping into big things, or we're playing one giant spell to spray out a lot of tokens, but at any rate, we're getting out of one spell. This really, again, controls the pace of the game, lets us kind of build to our big stuff, lets us do that battle cruiser magic, and keeps everyone on that same pace. The Hushbringer to shut down those death triggers and those ETBs, it really can literally mute an entire deck if you have this on the board. The Tithe Taker, it just punishes people for wanting to play on your turn. It helps protect some of the spells we're already working at, making things cost 1 more if they want to play that on us or activate that ability. Dranith Magistrate, it makes it so people can't play, or opponents anyways, can't cast things from anywhere other than their hands. So nobody's grabbing stuff from the graveyard or cheating something in from the library. It's something where they're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way and play it from their hands. Rest in Peace, this way we can shut down the graveyards, and if cards would go there, they just get exiled. So anything that is a graveyard mechanic, or anybody who likes to cast spells from their graveyard, they're not going to get to do it. Eidolon of Obstruction, this is really meant for mostly our Planeswalker heavy decks, especially people playing any form of Super Friends. Enough people play Planeswalkers in general, though, that to add that extra tax to really slow down their gameplay is going to be beneficial. Norn's Annex, it's just a great way to tax our opponents if they want to try to attack us. It's doubling down on that Baird mechanic. Palace Sentinels, I actually just love this creature. It's a utility creature, so not so much of taxing or punishing our opponents as it is putting card draw on the table for us and potentially for everybody. But if we're the hardest person to attack, it really is a benefit for us, and white doesn't draw cards that well, so Monarch abilities are really going to be important for this deck. Aegis of the Gods, giving us hexproof, a really cheap way to give us hexproof so people can't target us with some of those vicious spells. The Remorseful Cleric, at any point we can sacrifice it and exile an entire graveyard if something looks troubling to us. The Leonin Arbiter, players can't search libraries unless they pay 2, so taxing our opponents to look to search their library. So if they're trying to do an early Demonic Tutor, it's going to hurt because it won't work, or they're stinky little fetch lands. Tomic, so Tommy is a great card for really one specific type of deck, but when you're in Commander, you're not playing off a sideboard, you really have to be ready for any kind of deck. Tommy is great for the land decks. It literally shuts down a lands matter deck, and there's a lot of those out there. I know personally I play a ton of them, so just a vicious little card. Otherwise, it's a 2/3 for 2 with flying that adds 2 devotion for our Nyx Lotus. Darien, King of Keeldor. This is another way to just punish opponents from wanting to attack us. If they do, we're going to take the damage, and we're going to make tons of 1/1 white soldiers that once Elesh Norn is online, it's going to be a problem. Next one is the Spirit of the Labyrinth. Like I said, we don't have a lot of opportunity to draw multiple cards, so we don't want anybody else doing it either. Spirit of the Labyrinth makes it so each player can't draw more than 1 card in each of their turns. The Aven Mind Sensor, this one really shuts down the ability to search for a card. It makes it so your opponents can only search the top 4. The best thing about this is it has flash, so we can flash this thing in and kind of counter somebody's ability. And of course, the Containment Priest, another one that just shuts down non-token creatures from entering the battlefield if it wasn't cast. So no way to cheat it in, no way to sneak attack or anything crazy like that. This thing really locks it down to where somebody's gonna have to play it, like I said, the old-fashioned way. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about just some of our general protection, another handful of things to slow things down and give us a little added benefit for all of our creatures. The first one here is the Runetail Kitsune Ascendant. What is great about this is oftentimes you're going to have 30 or more life, which is what its condition is, and when it flips, it's preventing all the damage that would be dealt to creatures you control. So basically making your tokens super blockers. Mother of Runes, a good way again to protect anything. She protects herself, she protects your creatures, she protects Elesh Norn from targeted removal. Just an effective card to really keep things going in your direction. Unbreakable Formation, another great protection spell. Once you cast that Pegasus thing, if you do somehow have some free mana, you're going to want to hold this spell up to make sure nobody can board wipe you or destroy everything that you've just built. Giver of Runes, similar to Mother of Runes, it's just giving us that mechanic to give protection to Elesh Norn and our other creatures. Black Blade Reforged, we're going to have a ton of mana in this. We're going to play a handful of good legendary creatures. It's just a good way to get that extra damage in and keep things a little bit beefier. Shadow Spear, I play this in a lot of decks not because it's good, it is. I mean, to equip it, it's 1 mana to equip for 2, to give +1/+1 trample and lifelink is fantastic. That is crazy good. But I love the second ability on this is permanents your opponents control lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So if somebody's playing an Earl deck, or if they're playing any sort of indestructible deck with gods, we can turn that off whenever we want to, and then deal the damage as necessary, or use our targeted removal, whatever the case is. Mimic Vat is the last one. We're into token generation. We're also in the understanding that things are going to die and that we're going to be able to pick them up. Mimic Vat just gives us a repeatable creature that made sense for us at the time. It could be ours, could be our opponent's. It depends what makes sense. Next, we're going to talk about a little bit of our targeted removal with this deck, or just our general removal. Now, what is very unique with this deck is that we essentially have a commander that functions a lot like a board wipe. So we're not leaning too heavy on a lot of the different removal spells. Really, we're leaning into taxing our opponents to slowing the pace of the game down and ramping to make sure we can do the big things we want to do. So the rest of it is just a kind of a lean targeted removal to make sure that if we are disrupted, we have some sort of way to respond and interact and disrupt our opponents. So the first one, of course, is Swords to Plowshares, one of the best removal spells for creatures in white. We've got Mangara of Corindor, where we can exile her or him and target permanents, so it doesn't limit us with what kind of thing we want to exile from our opponents. The Generous Gift, again, it destroys any targeted permanent. And of course, the Winds of Abandon, a massive payoff, big board wipe where we can overload it and do some serious damage. The next one is Palace Jailer. Palace Jailer helps us, one, get the Monarch ability as well as the other one we talked about, but it does remove a creature similar to Oblivion Ring as long as we can maintain Monarchy. Day of Judgment, it's a 4-mana board wipe. It's just a traditional Wrath effect, very good if we're getting behind and we need some time to re-establish. Shatter the Sky, it's the exact same thing pretty much as Day of Judgment, except it has a draw trigger, which could be a downfall, could be a benefit, depends on the situation. And of course, Path to Exile, another way to do a Swords to Plowshare type mechanic. So a handful of removal, a little bit leaner than I normally play just because Elesh Norn does so much and we're going to work really hard to get her out there. The next thing we're going to talk about is some of our big payoffs. So we're playing big mana with this. This is mono white, big mana, tax our opponents, control the pace of the game. Hopefully we're getting into tons of situations where we have 10 plus mana to play with. So the first one we've got is Approach of the Second Sun. I caution you, once you've cast this, people know it's coming, they've got 7 turns to beat you. You do end up becoming the target unless you can use your politics and really manipulate the game in your favor and somehow fall off the radar. I've seen it happen. I don't know how it happens. Honestly, it happens too much that the approach person falls off the radar for a target, but hey, if you can sweet talk that group, go for it. The next one is the Parhelion 2. I've just always wanted a way to play this beast of a vehicle, and I feel like this is the one deck where it just can happen. We're getting to big mana quick. You know, honestly, we should have 7 mana for Elesh Norn by like turn 5 in some of the worst case scenarios. And then Parhelion 2 is just a beast that is only one more than that we can not have to attack with Elesh Norn, but instead tap to activate Parhelion 2 because its crew cost is 4, Elesh Norn is a 4/7, and then continuously spit out those white angels. And again, tokens are part of our strategy. The Mindslaver, something unexpected and really enjoyable in white. No one expects us to control somebody else's turn and push it into our favor. Mindslaver, a great late play in the game, especially if you get to a situation where it's you with one other person or you with 2 other people. You know, one person's already knocked out or 2 are, you can take control of somebody's turn and really eliminate them as a threat. Ugin, it's just one of the best planeswalkers you can play when you're in big mana. I love that it's a potential board wipe. It kind of adds to our availability with that. Otherwise, it's just pinging people down, and if we do get to ult it, it's a devastating ult. And the last one is Overwhelming Splendor. This is one where you pick a person, you tell them you hate them first, I hate you, and then you play this after you've played Elesh Norn and realize that they never get to play Magic for the rest of that game, at least if they wanted to win with creatures. It turns everything into a 1/1. They're getting -2/-2 with Elesh Norn. It basically shuts their game down. It's pretty satisfying. The last thing we have, because this wouldn't be a Brett deck without a combo, is our infinite combo with this deck. In mono white, there is one that is pretty prolific at this point. I think a lot of people played, especially if you're a Pioneer fan. So we're going to play with Heliod Suncrown. So we know what Heliod does, 2 colorless and a white for a 5/5 indestructible. It's not online unless your devotion is 5 or greater. The best part about this, though, is that whenever you gain life, you put a 1/1 counter on target creature or enchantment you control. And you can pay 2 to give a creature lifelink. So if we have Heliod on the board, and if we can get Triskelion or Walking Ballista on the board alongside of Heliod, we simply just need to give one of these creatures lifelink with Heliod. And once we've done that, we remove a counter, ping somebody for a damage, gain life, put the 1/1 counter back on Triskelion or Walking Ballista, and just rinse and repeat and run that through. It's infinite damage across the board. The one catch is Walking Ballista has to have at least 2 1/1 counters on it before you begin this, or Elesh Norn has to be on the battlefield, I suppose, before you do that. Otherwise, if it is just 1 counter as a 1/1 and you remove it, obviously it dies before you can re-add a 1/1 counter from Heliod. But an infinite combo that is pretty clean, pretty easy, and shockingly resilient. I mean, Heliod's indestructible. It's hard to deal with. And that is our take on Elesh Norn, Grand Mama Cenobite, the queen of the Praetors. She's pretty devastating. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech. Until next time, this is Booster Therapy. You have a wonderful rest of your day.